Hey everyone, how are you today? My name is Stephanie. Welcome to my channel. If you are new here, first of all, thanks for stopping by. I'm glad you're here. Secondly, you should know that I am not doing a makeup tutorial. I'm just going to put my makeup on while I chat with you about whatever's on my mind. But you are welcome to check out the list of products I use. I always leave that in the description for anybody who's interested. How are you today? So this morning, I did my very first workout on my feet since, May, I think. I had surgery on my foot this past summer, and I've been kind of, hang on just a second. There, little out there. I've been kind of taking it easy ever since, letting my foot heal, and I thought, I need to stop being such a baby about this and just see if my foot is ready to handle a more rigorous workout, and I did it, which is pretty exciting. So that's like the biggest news in my world today. So today though, as far as the topic I want to discuss, it is November 30th, which means tomorrow the war on Christmas officially begins. Are you ready? How do you plan to fight? But in all seriousness, so every year, this rhetoric starts to circulate online and on certain cable news networks and so forth that there is a war on Christmas. And that typically means that, people say things like we're not allowed to say Merry Christmas anymore. They're trying to take Christ out of Christmas, and so on and so forth. And this argument about the alleged war on Christmas has been going on every year for as long as I can remember. I don't remember a year when there wasn't a supposed war on Christmas. Which is interesting, because did you know that once upon a time, yes indeed, Christmas was canceled, but it was done by Christians. And it happened right here in the United States. There's a whole history behind it, though, and I decided to take a deep dive into it. Now, as usual, I am not presenting any information that is new, but I hope that you'll stick around and hang out with me anyway, just because I like having you here. And if you have any interesting tidbits you want to contribute, I would love to read about them in the comments. So, the war on Christmas and the canceling of Christmas. Where to begin? First, we have to go back to England. In the 16th and 17th century, there were English Puritans who kind of made a name for themselves by wanting more reform in the church. After the king separated from the Roman Catholic Church and formed the Church of England, the English Puritans were like, this is great, but there are more things that I would like to do. Let's not stop there, because there's more reform to be made. And so they had a strong presence in the English Parliament. And eventually, they convinced the king to consider banning things like certain religious services. And eventually, there was a, what is it called? Let me consult my notes. A directory for public worship. This was created in 1642, King Charles? Yes, sorry, I get all my kings mixed up. So King Charles I agreed to the request from Parliament to make the Christmas holiday a much more subdued holiday than it had been. And then in 1645, they issued a directory for public worship, for the public worship of God. And in this, it said basically that the only holy day that would be recognized would be Sundays. There would be no more religious services outside of church on Sunday. There would be no more religious festivals, etc. And Sunday church was going to be all the religious services that would be held publicly. Well, eventually this led to, in 1647, essentially a banning of Christmas. They banned all public celebrations of Christmas, and eventually, a few years later, it even became criminalized. You could face severe consequences for publicly celebrating Christmas. Now, the Puritans in what would eventually come to be known as the United States, they were people who came here because they didn't feel that the Church of England was, I guess, biblically sound, and they wanted freedom to worship God the way they felt was right. So they came here and colonized in an effort to, at least in part, in an effort to achieve religious freedom. Whether or not that's why they actually came here is sometimes put up for debate, but there at least was an element of the search for religious freedom being part of the reason for the original colonizers to be here. So they're hearing all this stuff going on across the pond, and how these draconian measures are being taken to assure that Christmas cannot be publicly celebrated. And they're like, you know what? We want to do that. So in 1659, the Massachusetts Bay Colony decided that public celebration of Christmas was not going to be permitted. It was made illegal. Why did they do that? Well, there were a few different reasons. So the Puritans were people who believed in a very strict interpretation of the Bible. They didn't think that there was a lot of wiggle room on how we interpret the Bible. And since the celebration of the Nativity was never acknowledged anywhere in the Bible, there is no evidence of it, they decided that, well, since it's not in the Bible, we can't have it as part of our lives either. And so that was part of the reason they decided to make Christmas illegal in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. However, another part of the reason was because of the way people celebrated. Christmas celebrations back then were not humble affairs whatsoever. They were not days of somber solitude and quiet. Not that they are now, but back then, the Christmas holiday had essentially been a pagan tradition that was Christianized. It was hijacked by the church and turned into a Christian celebration as a means of, I guess, minimizing the pagan influence on people in an effort to convert more people to the church. So basically the church hijacked this pagan religious celebration and turned it into something Christian. And it wasn't even that they actually believed Christ was born in December. It is that the celebration of Saturnalia happened on December 25th. It was a Roman holiday of lights. It was a drunken affair. It really was just you know, no holds barred celebrating. And in England and in the United States, or what would become the United States, in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, it was believed that not only were these celebrations a disruption of public peace, but they were too rooted in paganism for Christians to celebrate in good conscience. They felt that it was impossible to take a pagan celebration and turn it into something Christian, because you would still, regardless of what you did to it, you were still going to have the pagan roots. And in fact, there is something that was said. Please hold. I wish that my mind works in such a way that I could just memorize these things, but it does not work that way. So, it was said by the 16th century clergyman Hugh Latimer, men dishonor Christ more in the 12 days of Christmas than in all the 12 months besides. So there was drinking, there was gambling. In England, and I don't know if this happened here, but in England it was considered, during this time period, people of poorer classes could go to the homes of the wealthy and demand to be let in compensation for having serenaded them with Christmas carols, and then could also make demands regarding being fed and demand the best that the wealthy family had to offer instead of just the scraps. Basically saying, whatever you would feed your own family, that's what we're demanding before we leave. And some of the Christmas carols we still sing today are reminiscent of that. The one about bring us the figgy pudding, that really is, that is a Christmas carol about this very thing, going to the home of a wealthy person and feeling entitled to be led into their home and fed with the best that they had to offer, and only then would they leave. So people felt like, you know, this is a very strong sense of entitlement and we're not comfortable with this. And for that and so many other reasons, we're just going to say that these public celebrations of Christmas need to fall by the wayside. Another thing that would happen is men would dress like women and women would dress like men. It was just part of the celebration, and people weren't comfortable with that. What else? They would gamble. There was just a lot of licentious behavior happening in the name of Christmas. So rather than allow this to continue, the Puritans in England and in the United States eventually, in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, I've got to stop saying the United States. It was not the United States yet. In the Massachusetts Bay Colony, they decided that instead of Christmas being a time of celebration, it needed to be a time of somber reflection on the sinful nature of man. And in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, anybody who was caught publicly celebrating Christmas, having a feast on Christmas, etc., could be fined 5 shillings. In the Massachusetts Bay Colony and in England both, they made a point to keep their businesses open on Christmas Day, their schools open on Christmas Day, and if you were found to be foregoing labor or closing your business or any such thing on Christmas Day, you could actually be fined. Now, needless to say, people continued celebrating anyway. In England, there were actual riots once it became like criminal to celebrate. People were like, no, we like our Christmas and we're not letting you take it away from us. And there were actually riots to protest the criminalization of Christmas. Now in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, people continued celebrating in the quietness and privacy of their own homes, and people who lived further away from the main hub of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, which would have been Boston, they just didn't care. They're like, you know what, come and take it. We're going to celebrate Christmas anyway. And they just went about their lives as if the edict had never come down that they are going to be fined for celebrating Christmas. Now, in England, after years and years of Christmas being outlawed, the monarchy was restored, and I think it was in 1666. Was it 1666? Let me consult my notes. It might have been later than that. Let's see. I didn't write it down. I'm sorry. But anyway, so eventually, it was said, you know what, this is ridiculous. We're going to allow people to celebrate Christmas. And the monarchy was restored because the Puritans had overthrown King Charles and eventually executed him. And once the monarchy was restored, all of these draconian laws regarding Christmas were they were tossed out. People were like, we're not doing this anymore. This isn't what we wanted in the first place. And you had your chance and you're done, so we're going to put Christmas back where we believe it belongs and people can celebrate. Yay. Now in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, after this happened in England, there was a lot of pressure, a lot of political pressure for the Massachusetts Bay Colony to overturn their draconian laws, not just about Christmas, but about so many other things. You know, laws had been established according to Puritan beliefs, and these laws were intended, they were more or less a theocracy as far as I can tell, because a lot of the laws were not necessarily you know, they weren't things that the Massachusetts Bay Colony really needed, but they were things that, as Puritans, the people in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, those who were governing the colony, felt that it was important to have them because it was reflective of their Puritan beliefs. So eventually, England was like, listen, you need to do something about this. This needs to change, or you're going to lose your royal charter. And then Massachusetts Bay Colony very reluctantly reversed some of their laws, and that included the one banning Christmas. And it was for the purpose of keeping their charter. Now, the Massachusetts Bay Colony might have rid themselves of the actual ban of Christmas. However, that did not mean that they were going to now just celebrate as if the ban never existed in the first place. For a very long time, they did not close their schools. They did not close their businesses. It was just sort of unsaid that we might have to change our laws to accommodate what England is telling us to do, but we're not going to really conduct ourselves any differently. We're going to continue as if the ban on Christmas is still a thing, because for a lot of the very devout Puritans, there was no justification for celebrating Christmas because it wasn't in the Bible. It was rooted in paganism. It encouraged in their minds licentious behavior, and they could find no reason whatsoever to change their conduct for Christmas. They didn't feel that, you know, using a holiday to justify sinful behavior was in anyone's best interest. So they carried on as if the ban was still in place. In fact, it wouldn't be until 1856. I think about that. 1856, before Massachusetts Bay Colony, or Massachusetts, the state at that time, I suppose, would even acknowledge Christmas as a public holiday. And then at the same time, it also acknowledged the 4th of July, and there was one other one that I don't recall right now. But, you know, it was all at once, all of these things that they felt were not in keeping with their traditional beliefs. They all at once decided, okay, fine, we'll acknowledge it. So I don't know a lot of people from Massachusetts. Is Massachusetts still kind of lukewarm on Christmas? I mean, are they still kind of like, eh? You know, because it seems like if that's the history of your state, I wonder if any of that still carries on today. I don't know. If you're from Massachusetts and you can tell me how Massachusetts people view Christmas, I would love to know, because I'm always curious to know how many of these attitudes carry down through the generations. Because really, we're not, I mean, 1856, it's a long time ago, but it's also not at the same time. Is that enough time for entire attitudes to change? I don't know. I'm asking genuinely, because, I mean, I have never known Christmas to be anything other than a really happy time. I mean, even when I was a kid and my parents had almost no money, this was in the 80s, we're in the middle of a hard recession, and I remember one Christmas, you know, my parents had told us there really won't be any Christmas gifts this year. And it was still a happy time, but they said, you know, we are not doing Christmas this year. We don't have anything for you. And I remember feeling sad, but also like, okay, you know, it is what it is. And, you know, they had prepared us to have no Christmas gifts. Well, then we woke up on Christmas morning, and there were a lot of gifts under the tree. And as it had turned out, some people from the church we attended at the time had dropped off gifts for us, which was really nice. As many issues as I have with the church, I will say that the church that we attended when I was a kid did a lot of things right, and that was one of them. They made sure people were taken care of. So it's just so strange to me to think that there was ever a time when people thought that celebrating Christmas was actually a bad thing. Now we have the war on Christmas every stinking year, and I just laugh about it now. You know, even when I was an evangelical Christian, I don't remember ever thinking there was a legitimate war on Christmas. You know, I don't remember ever thinking that people are trying to tell me I can't say Merry Christmas and I have to say Happy Holidays. I don't remember ever feeling that way. And then when I got to be in my, gosh, this has been going on for so long, so maybe my 20s, I started hearing about these people who firmly believed that there was a war on Christmas. And it just boggles the mind. And then over the last few years, people have taken the idea that holiday greetings should be inclusive as an indication that people are trying to take Christ out of Christmas, which just amuses me because, you know, looking at the history of Christmas and looking at where our Christmas celebration came from in the first place, which, yes, it is strongly rooted in pagan traditions, it's just funny to me because the reality is Christ was never in Christmas. Christ was injected into Christmas as a means of subjugating people. And I think that maybe, just maybe, Christ never wanted to be a part of this anyway. If he did, it seems to me he would have said something. He would have said, like, okay, guys, here's the deal. Every year around my birthday, which we're going to say is in December, I want you to put up a tree. I want you to give each other presents. I want you to go into debt by buying ridiculous presents you can't afford just to prove to people how much you love them. And if you don't do it, I'm going to feel really angry and really sad and feel forgotten. So please make sure you do this every year. Just like at Easter, I don't think that Jesus ever said we need to have a celebration of the most brutal hours of his life every single year. And then, yay-ha, he rose from the dead. And I want you to make sure you have a celebration of that every year, because if you don't, I'm going to seriously doubt your devotion to me, and it's going to hurt my feelings a lot. So please do that. Thanks. I just don't see that Jesus ever wanted to be part of a Christmas celebration. I mean, if you want to add him in there, that's your thing. I just don't, from my point of view, it just doesn't appear that Jesus ever cared that much to have his birthday turned into a big celebration. So the war on Christmas argument is very interesting to me. And it gets more ridiculous with each passing year. On Facebook, and I'm on Facebook under the same name I used for my YouTube account, every year I've started doing letters from the front, war on Christmas. This year is obviously war on Christmas 2020. And I write these letters that are supposedly from the front lines of the war on Christmas, as if it is a person facing combat who is writing home to their beloved and just keeping them updated on how things are going with the war. And it's a lot of fun. And I try to get other people to participate in it just to kind of poke fun at our society a little bit, at how seriously, honestly, if your biggest problem, if the greatest offense you're facing is somebody has said to you, hey, you know what, it would be nice if instead of just saying Merry Christmas, you just say Happy Holidays, because that includes everyone who's celebrating at this time of year, not just people who believe like you do. If that's your biggest obstacle that you're facing right now, I'd say you're doing pretty good, and you should probably quit complaining, because of all the things going on in the world right now, this alleged war on Christmas is probably the least significant of all of them. We have people dying from a virus that is easily transmitted because there are a lot of people who think that they know better than actual experts and aren't going to follow the advice of the experts because somebody from QAnon told them it's all a joke. So, and it's been true every year, but it's especially true this year. If your biggest obstacle that you're facing is the supposed war on Christmas, I really hope that you are thankful for how good you have it, because that's nothing. That's nothing, baby. You are doing really well if that's the only thing that you have to be angry about. So what has been your experience with the, quote, war on Christmas? And do you think that most people realize that the only time Christmas has ever officially been canceled and wishing Merry Christmas to another person was outlawed was actually done by Christians? Do you think more people, do you think people realize this? And some people would say, as they do now about certain types of Christians, well, they weren't real Christians. They don't represent me. Let me tell you something. And this is oftentimes said in regard to white evangelicals today with their extreme behaviors, with the extreme legislations they're calling for at times. Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, those things do represent Christians. The reason for that being, anybody who wears the label of Christian in westernized cultures, in the United States and elsewhere, to wear the label of Christian does afford people a certain measure of social status among certain people. It allows a presumption of goodwill where maybe it's not warranted. I think that's changing somewhat, because if we're being completely honest about it, the last 4 years have proven definitively that being labeled a Christian does not make you a good person. But I think that it would also be foolish to think that having the label of Christian doesn't come with any social currency. It does. It comes with a lot of advantages. And so during the times of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, I mean, to say that you were not a Puritan, that you didn't share those beliefs, that could come with a heavy price. You could be found under suspicion of witchcraft and killed for that. So I would say that even though the circumstances might be different, it would be dishonest to say that the Puritan people don't represent Christians of today, because in many ways they most certainly do, especially the type of Christians who are holding all the power right now. Unfortunately, progressive Christians don't typically gain the traction that evangelical Christians do, particularly white evangelical Christians. So in many ways, the Puritans who outlawed Christmas are the kissing cousin, if you will, of the evangelicals of today. They were extreme in their beliefs. They wanted to punish people who didn't agree with them, and their beliefs had a dire impact on people who didn't share them but were still subject to them. So that is, I mean, when people say, well, they weren't real Christians or they don't represent us, yes, they do. And I think that this speaks to a larger issue of some types of Christians wanting to disassociate themselves from other types of Christians, when in fact, it really doesn't matter if they're part of your particular type of Christianity or not. Whether it's fair or not, they do still represent your system of beliefs. And I think that's important to acknowledge that, because by not acknowledging that, by acting as though, people who believe in extreme things are so other from you, it allows those beliefs to continue perpetuating under the same banner that you're operating under, but it goes unchecked. Because if you can successfully separate yourself from people who wear the same label as you but don't believe the same things you do, and you don't call those people out in a meaningful way and make meaningful strides in holding them in check. Whether it's fair or not, they do still represent, you know, evangelical Christians, fair or not, do still represent Christians under the larger umbrella of Christianity, just like, right or not, when people think of Puritans, they're not necessarily thinking that Puritans don't represent all Christians, that they're thinking that Puritans definitely represented Christians of the time. So it's very interesting, and I think that when people talk about the war on Christmas and want to say that the fact that Christians were the only ones ever, as far as I know, to outlaw Christmas, when they want to present it as though something that draconian could never happen today, I think that's a mistake, because as we have seen, it most certainly can happen today. I think the last 4 years have been a testament to the extremes that are, you know, that could happen today very easily. And I think that, you know, it's easy to look at, oh my gosh, they outlawed Christmas, and laugh at that. But then think about it. It's like, why were they able to do that? They were able to do that because a group of people who had extreme views got into positions of power and for a while outnumbered people with different views, and therefore were able to create the kind of government they wanted and that they believed everyone else needed to follow. So I think it's unwise to dismiss these realities simply because they look, you know, outdated and quaint and silly to us now. It's unwise to think it could never happen because we supposedly know better now. So I think that the Puritans have things to teach us. I think that as funny as it is, you know, to think that there was a time when Christmas was outlawed, there are lessons to be learned there, particularly lessons regarding, you know, how privileged we are to be able to, you know, hold different beliefs and still exist in the same place, and to be able to do that without any fear whatsoever of punishment. And, you know, there is concern that someday that might not be true if certain brands of Christianity are left unchecked. And that, you know, it can't be holding them in check by people who are not Christians, even though that does happen. I really think that the way to hold them in check has to come from other Christians, because people who believe that way don't tend to listen to people who don't wear the same label that they do. And I think that people who have left the evangelical church can attest to that. You know, once you've left the church, people of that mindset suddenly take you far, far, far less seriously than they did when you were at least a Christian in name. Even if you didn't share the same beliefs that they did about every single thing, if you were at least a Christian in name, they might listen to you. There is a man right now in the middle of the pandemic who's going around doing, he calls them "Let Us Worship." Yeah, they're concerts, basically. They're not worship services, they're concerts. Or if they are worshiping anything, it's worshiping him. He gets so much backlash from people who are not Christians. So much backlash. Do you think he cares, though? He does not. And why is that? Because he gets more affirmation from people who wear the same label he does. Now, I have seen this individual also dismiss other Christians, but, you know, the Christians who are not doing things well, who are harming people with their beliefs, they're the ones who have been given the power right now. And it would be remiss to believe that things like outlawing Christmas and making it punishable by a fine if you're found to be celebrating it could never ever happen now. So what do you think are the lessons that we could take away from this bit of history that people don't talk about nearly enough? Because the war on Christmas is always presented as if it is secular people who are trying to take Christ out of Christmas and so forth, when in fact it was actually Christians who did that. Not only here, but also in the UK. So how does one explain that? How did the quote war on Christmas become a thing of secular people allegedly trying to shut down religious people by outlawing, or not outlawing, but making it socially unacceptable for them to openly celebrate Christmas? And this is a myth I see perpetuated again and again in conservative circles, where it's presented as though, you know, it's dangerous to be a Christian at Christmas time, because if you say Merry Christmas, you're going to be in trouble with the liberal elite who don't think you should say that. How did that become a thing? Clearly from people who don't know their history. All right, I'm going to finish up. I'm almost done. Yes, I am. And I will be right back. Hold on. All right, I am back. I'm struggling with my eyelashes again. You know, honestly, sometimes I don't know why I even put them on, because I'm not good at it. And I always end up thinking, ugh, I should have just left them off. But here we are. So I had to pause because even though I did most of my eyes on camera, I had to do my lipstick. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but this lipstick has got a lot of glitter in it. And it's actually because it's like a 3-step process. And the glitter is not part of the lipstick itself. I have to add it after I put adhesive on, and I cannot do that and talk to you at the same time, so I had to pause. So I wanted to show you this book that I put together called The War on Christmas, Letters from the Front, and it's available on Amazon. And it actually was one I wrote. The letters contained in the book were written in 2018, so it's kind of a time capsule. You know, and it talks about a lot of the things that were controversial during that particular war on Christmas. And, you know, some of the stuff also applies any year, but it's kind of funny. I'll just read to you the first page. It says, "My dearest love, while it grieves me to say goodbye, I find comfort in knowing that it won't be long before we are together again. This war, this tedious war, tears me away from you year after year, yet I can no sooner surrender the fight than I can deny my love for you. We fight for a noble cause, and I will answer the call to service with a resounding ho, ho, ho every time. The war on Christmas is one that beckons all of us to appeal to our better angels, to find it within ourselves to heed the call and destroy every pocket of society in which the disease that is Christmas hides. We will not rest, though we grow weary. We will march forward, singular in our purpose, determination, in every stride, until Christmas is vanquished, your beloved." Obviously, this is satire, but if this is your jam, this is available on Amazon, and I've added the link in the description. It's a fun little book, perfect for the person in your life who enjoys some humor and political commentary, and it's a good time. I should tell you, in the reviews, there was someone who was very disappointed to discover that they were not actual letters from an actual war on Christmas. This was a genuine review that I got, and they were very dismayed to find that they weren't real letters from a real front, from a real war. I don't even know what to say to that, but it's a fun book. I put it on sale on Amazon, and it might be a fun gift for someone this holiday season. Anyway, I hope that this video was educational. I did not intend to go on a tangent about Christians of today, but that's just kind of what happened. I don't have any problem with religion. I really don't. What I have a problem with is how some people choose to use that religion to harm other people. I don't really care what people believe. Just don't tell me I have to believe it too, and don't think that your religious beliefs give you the right to govern how others live their lives. That's my issue with religion, not religion itself. Religion can be a beautiful thing. It can be a uniting thing. It can be something that inspires people to be their very best selves. Unfortunately, especially in recent years, but really always, religion has been a bludgeoning tool that people have used to justify horrific behavior toward other people. And that is where I have to draw the line. So hope you understand that, and I hope that this, you know, if you're somebody who is somebody who identifies as a Christian and you're struggling with what you see other Christians doing, I would say that it is your job to say something, and more importantly, to do something to counteract what is being done, because unfortunately, Christianity is hurting a lot of people today, and it's so needless. It does not have to be that way. You can be a Christian and be a decent person, and I don't know when or how those two things became separate things, but as someone from the outside looking in, it just seems like it shouldn't be that way. I said what I said. Anyway, have a great day. Be good to yourselves, be good to each other. I do have some fun things coming up for the Christmas season that I hope you'll enjoy. And if you have any questions, comments, further insights into the canceling of Christmas and the modern day war on Christmas, leave a comment. I read my comments, I reply to them when it's appropriate, and I would love to hear from you. All right, take care, be good to yourselves, don't shit on yourselves or anyone else, and I will see you again real soon. Bye.